here we go. So let us start with, if I can find the file I had open. There we go. Scroll up. All right. Oh, I don't need any of this information. So the stuff I've done so far on the research paper grading is the first thing I did was on, I believe it was either Thursday evening or Friday. It might have been a mixture of both. I started zeroing out multiple attempts. What that means is people who had submitted the paper multiple times, either by accident or because they forgot the works cited one time, so they submitted it with the works cited the second time. I zeroed those out. What now?
Mine was faulty internet. It wasn't showing.
Faulty internet.
So I kept hitting the submit.
And then it just came in like 3 or 4 times. Well, in those cases, I zeroed those out, and only the most recent attempt is the one that I'm going to be grading. So if you happen to look through your attempts and you see actually the third one worked and the fourth one didn't, you need to go ahead and let me know or resubmit that. But in most cases, I don't think that's the problem. So I zeroed those out first. Then over the course of Thursday and Friday, I also continued zeroing. And when I say zeroed out, I mean like I gave it a paragraph that said, hey, I'll grade your most recent attempt later. Right now I'm just zeroing out the multiple attempts. Then after that, I screened for citation problems. So I remember I mentioned to y'all that if you had internal citation was missing or works cited, that I would give you like a 0 and say, hey, submit it with the works cited, or hey, submit it with internal citation. And that did happen on maybe 1 or 2, but not very many. So that ended up being not a huge problem. So after that, I was going to start grading, and I think it took me all the way until the end of Friday evening to get all that stuff screened out properly. So I did actually start grading in the English 1301 papers. Now, I did all the screening for every class at once, and also the zeroing out. So I did that for all 3 classes, then I did all 3 classes for the other as well. But once I started grading, I was just grading 1 class at a time, which is English 1301 is where I started. But we have to go back to Thursday so I can start telling you a thing. Thursday evening, I noticed there's a tiny crack in the wall of our house. Not like in the wall, but like, if you ever have like in your house, you have like a,
In the sheetrock?
No, not like that. It's like, you know how like up above you have sheetrock, and like sometimes down below on the second half of the wall you'll have like wood or some kind of paneling, or at our house, like in the bathroom, there's like tile on the second bottom half, and I noticed there was a crack between the tile part of the wall and like that ran along the whole seam. I was like, huh, look, crack, that's funny. And so I said, honey, look at this. And she comes, she says, oh, look, there's a crack, that's funny. And then she says, maybe I'll send it to my dad, see what he says, because he's good at like knowing what to do, like in house stuff. And so she sends him a text, and then he calls her, and then she goes outside, like talks to him on the phone for a little bit, 'cause it's nice outside. And I'm sitting there screening papers. And she comes back in and she says, okay, so here's what's going to happen. It's probably mold, so the wall is crumbling underneath the weight of the tile, and it's all going to fall over at some point soon and crumble to the floor. So he's going to come over here. He's going to gut our entire bathroom and redo it. It's going to take him about 3 days. He's taking off of work. And I'm like, excuse me, what? Well, I can't help with any of this. I can't do any of this stuff. This is research paper grading weekend. That's my whole weekend. Like, I can't. If they come over, I can't help with anything. And I always feel like I have to help or I feel rude. She says, no, I talked to him on the phone, and he said that, in fact, it'd be nice if...
You know, like this, like, does it vibrate time right before it happens?
Yeah. He said, actually, Chris, he said it'd be nice if you didn't feel obligated to have to help, because it'll just slow him down. And I was like, okay. We're on the same page. So... their plan was to come over and do all that stuff. Now, when they got there, there was no water damage and mold damage in the wall. It was somebody had stacked up bricks from when they did our fireplace and just like, what do we do with these extra bricks? Stacked them in the wall. And then they started falling over onto the wall, and the weight of the bricks was like pushing the wall over. So they just took out the bricks. That was it.
Now you have some extra bricks.
Yeah, I guess. Some extra 50-year-old bricks that we've got. But because they'd already come down all that way, then we ended up eating dinner with them, so that it wasn't just like a huge waste of the trip. So that was my Friday night. Then like late Friday, my mom texted and said, "Hey, your grandfather's real sick. He might not make it to the weekend. The hospice is saying." I was like, "Oh, okay." And so sure enough, Friday night, like later in the night, he died. So my grandfather died this weekend as well. So that ended up taking up some of Saturday. And then on Sunday, Easter Sunday, I was leading singing at church. And then we went out to lunch as a family and talked about funeral stuff. And then after that, I got back to grading, which I had done some of on Saturday. So ended up being a pretty busy weekend, didn't get everything graded that I wanted to grade. But I continued grading last night, and so I've only got about 6 of the 1301 papers left, and I'm moving on to 1302. And I know this sounds terrible, but because it's about literature and poetry sometimes, like I find the English 1302 research papers to be a little bit more interesting. You know, hearing about abortion again, I'm just like, oh, great, 1301, thank you. But like the 1302 is like, here's how literature relates to the real world. I'm like, yes, here we go, it's exciting. So I feel like I'm going to go slightly faster through those, but I can't make a promise. It's just a theory I have. So we'll see. Right, because it's less like, oh, here's somebody telling me that we should legalize marijuana for like the 15 millionth time. Yeah, it's like abortion's bad. Here's all the research that proves it, but it doesn't matter because I felt this way before I started writing. Right. I said, don't choose anything you're biased about. And so they're like, so choose something I already have a preconceived opinion about? No, but whatever you feel helps you get to the end of a paper. So that sometimes is what happens in 1301 papers. 1302 papers, at least the literature's there, so I have some stuff to be interested about, unless it's soldiers home and PTSD, in which case I'm like, here we go again. If you did that, no worries. I'll still grade it honestly. It's just you have to be aware that I've seen the arguments before, so I might not get excited about your paper in a way that I might submit. Huh?
The Trump one seemed like a popular paper to do recently.
Somebody said that they found an article written on Trump's wall and Frost's wall in the databases, and I never could find it. I looked. I typed in all kinds of search terms, and I could never locate that article that they said had already been written. I spent some time, I think it was Wednesday afternoon, looking, and I just couldn't find it.
I found one article somewhat on what I was writing, and Bartleby and that. And
they just didn't read it?
Yeah, I avoided it. I'm like, oh, look, I can use that.
No. So that was the grading setup. So I haven't graded y'all's papers yet, so I have anything to say about like what the papers are doing so far and like some problems with it. But I did want to allow, if y'all had any questions to ask any questions before we just jump into Love Song and Alfred Prufrock. If y'all have any questions about anything related to the class at all that you think needs to be covered or that needs to be addressed.
Quizzes are due on Thursday night?
When you say quizzes or labs, okay. Yeah, the labs, technically the due date is Thursday
At midnight?
night. But I won't be putting anything into my grade book until Sunday night.
Okay.
So that might help you a little bit.
Okay, sweet.
But we do have grading conferences next week, so anything you wanted on the grading conferences, I would say you had to have that in by Sunday.
Because they won't like shut down after Thursday.
No, they're not going to shut down.
Okay.
They'll still be, I believe, there. So they should exist. Now, some people have noted that, I mean, you might want to go in and check and see what your situation is, because some people have told me they've had problems opening them. And I don't know exactly what the problem is there, because on my end, when I click it, it just works. And that's Google Chrome on a PC. Now, that if you've got something else, I think the problems I've seen mostly are on Chromebooks. People have those little Chromebooks. Like, for some reason, the way those are set up to operate, they jump right into things that are not really helpful at times. And
Mine kept trying to download the PowerPoints.
yeah, I noticed that mine would do that as well, but I can at least hit don't download the PowerPoint. What now?
Are you going to round the things again? Like
The lab.
Yes. So make sure you've completed them all. That's what I'm mostly concerned about in the labs. As long as you complete them all, and I can tell that you've put forth your score, it seems to indicate that you put forth effort trying to get those correct. And I can generally tell when people haven't. As long as you do that, you'll get the full credit for the labs. I did want to show you something. I'd like people to send me an email reminder to remind me to. Oh crap! Okay, good. No, I'm recording. I just thought that I hadn't been recording for something else today, but I think that I just didn't show the students. I think I thought I showed the students, but didn't. I don't know. But I wanted to show you just real quick, like I've got the file perfected, but I cannot possibly, I can't do it on Google Drive, so I apologize for that. But if y'all will send me an email, I'll add this to Blackboard today. I don't know if it'll be in my office or at home once I do it, but I wanted to show you. It was this file, so it's the formula for how to calculate your grades, and it should be accurate as far as I can tell. So it's got synthesis analysis 1, critical evaluation, synthesis analysis 2, synthesis analysis 3, the research paper, then down below in-class discussion, discussion posts. Here, let me delete all these grades first, then you'll see. Oh, crap. Delete. Oh, no. Delete, 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 delete. Delete. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Darn it. Well, we're going to have to make a change. So, give me a second. I'm glad I found this out because this is important. Did I freeze it? Okay. View, review, unprotect. Okay. So I need to take all these, format cells, protection, not locked. Okay.
Oh, from your email. Yeah. Okay.
Now protect sheet.
This is his thing.
What is his address?
All right. So there was something I did improperly, so I didn't realize that. So now what I've done on this program is I didn't want to give you the opportunity to change anything that you weren't supposed to. So let's just say let me just go through these and let's see if it works, for example. So let's say your synthesis analysis grade is like a 95. Critical evaluation, you got an 80. Synthesis analysis 2, you also got a 95. No, let's do Oedipus because I didn't like the way you wrote about Oedipus. 91. Then synthesis analysis 3, you got like a 92 because you like the poetry. But now you're like, what do I get on the research paper to get the exemption? What do I get on the research paper to get the grade that I want? Now what you'll have to do is put in your actual in-class discussion. Now your in-class discussion grade and your lab grades are going to be pretty easy. So everybody gets the in-class discussion grade generally. You have to actively do something bad to not get those points. The labs, as long as you've done them all, you can enter 100 for them, assuming you reach what I'd later tell you is the percentage I think you need to reach. Now the presentation, as long as you do one later, I'll go ahead and let you know that most people who do a presentation get a 100, assuming you also did a research paper. So the only thing that's a question here is your quiz average, your discussion post average. So if you want to be as accurate as possible, if you already know you have the achievement, you can go ahead and figure that in. So if you're like, all right, I'm aware that I have the achievement for the discussion post, so I'll just count my 5 highest, so that's a 100. Now, if you're like, okay, my quizzes, I know I'm going to get that achievement too, so I'll just go and look at what my 5 highest quizzes are, and you say, okay, well, I got 2 70s, 2 80s, and a 90, then that's 16, 14, 39 divided by 5, that's 7.9, so it's a 79. So you have a 79 average on your, that doesn't make any sense.
Just an 80.
140, 30,
I'll get back to you on my quizzes, so
plus a
I'm
9.
really important.
That's divided by 5. That can't be right. 2 70s, 2 80s, and a 90 ends up being tilted in the favor of the, that doesn't make sense. It would be a 79. It should be higher. It should be 81.
Good, let's go again. I think 81. 2 70s, 2 80s if you scrap.
Hey Siri, what is 70 plus 70 plus 80 plus 80 plus 90?
70 plus 70 plus 80 plus 80 plus 90 is 390.
Divided by 5.
What is 390 divided by 5?
It's 78.
78.
Why?
Because it goes into
I forgot.
350 70 times and it goes into 48 times.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot.
Then you say
I'm an idiot. I was thinking about splitting between 70s and 90s, not 70s and 80s. The difference between 70 and 80 is not an 80, it's 75. Okay, that is okay. Now I get it. All right, so that's right. 78. So
78.
it was so weird. My brain was doing the math correctly, but
It wasn't coming out right.
It was the wrong
my logic was shut off. So I was going, that can't be right. All right, so let's just say, yeah, 78 is your quiz grade. All right, so with that, it says right now your final average is a 69, your essay average is a 48. So at this point, what you need to do is start plugging in what you think you might get on the research paper, what you would need to get the essay exemption, and also what you need to get the grade you want, which would be like an A. So you also probably know if you got the achievement that gives you the roundup. So let's say, first of all, you're like, okay, what if I get the lowest thing I could possibly think I would get, which is a 50, because I turned something in. Well, that would give me an essay average of a 71, and then that would not give me my exemption, but my average would be an 80 at that point, because I did all well on the other stuff. Yay. Well, what about if I got a 60? That's a little better, but it still doesn't give me my exemption. What about a 70? Does that give me my exemption? Barely gives me my exemption. And then once I've got my 70 on the research paper, then my final exam comes in as an essay average of a 79.78, so that works for the final exam exemption. And then that makes my final average an 87.69. And if I've got that achievement, then it would round up to an A.
Can you plug in, like in the other two synthesis analysis, like number 2, make it a 90, the other one make it a 95, and then the critical evaluation, make it an just so I don't have to do the nudge.
Will you just do all this for me?
I'm
No.
just kidding.
Now what I've done with this file is so you don't accidentally mess it up. I made it where just now I thought I had done it before, but if you delete those boxes and delete those boxes, those are the only things you can change. Everything else you can't change. So if you try to accidentally delete this formula, it won't work. It'll say it's protected. You can't do anything. If you try to delete this one, it's protected. If you try to delete it, it's protected. What about this paragraph? Nope, protected. What about this paragraph down here? Sorry, it's protected. What about English 1302? I don't like this class. No, it's protected. So you can change whatever you want, but it's not going to do anything if you try. So you can only change the essays that can be changed. So I wonder what I should actually put in there. Do y'all think it'd be better to put in blanks so that y'all could then fill those blanks in, or put in other numbers that you could change to your own?
I just
Maybe or zeros.
Yeah, zeros.
Like put zeros in.
Yeah, zeros. Okay, that works.
Someone's doing well in this class.
All right, so that way people know to put numbers in instead of zeros, and that'll help. All right, so we'll save that. And if y'all send me an email to remind me, I'll add that to Blackboard. But I will tell you that the only way for you to possibly do this is if you've got Microsoft Office on your computer. So if you've got Microsoft Word, it probably came with PowerPoint and Excel. If you've got like the student edition. So you should be able to open this, but if it's a situation where you don't have Microsoft stuff, then you may have to open it. Can Google Docs? Do you use Google Docs? You told me?
I do. I use it on the Chrome thing, the applications.
Yeah.
So it should work.
It'll open an Excel document in Google Drive, but I think it'll let you even make the changes on there, and it should make you let you make the changes on the correct cells. But I don't know if it'll let you. The reason I couldn't make it a Google Drive document is because if I let you edit it where you can make your own changes, then whatever happens is like if somebody changes it and then you go into it, then the changes you made are going to stay there, so somebody will see your grade. So I didn't want to have that possible likelihood of somebody seeing somebody else's grade, so I just got rid of that whole
Put
possibility.
it on Blackboard now, I can check and see if it works right the way that I do it.
Yes. Why don't you tell me if it works on Thursday?
Okay.
The problem is if I put it up there now, I'd have to create a whole post for now, and that's going to take me like 5 to 15 minutes to figure all that out, and I don't want to waste everybody's time creating a post. It does need to be on the main page though, right? Probably above the syllabus.
Yeah, probably.
So it's like the first thing you see when you come in.
Because a lot of people might forget about it between now and then look, the new thing.
And it's not going to help if I put it in my grades, because the only thing you can see in my grades is my grades. That'd be useless. All right. So I'll be trying to put that in there for y'all today. In fact, I probably should change the other class as well to just zeros. Why don't I just do this? There's 1301. Okay. Probably should do the same to Britlet while I'm at it, but I'm not going to. Okay, from here, let us... Nobody has any more questions about stuff?
No.
If you think of some stuff, you can ask. We're going to start by talking about Love Song of Alfred Prufrock.
You asked me where I read this before.
Where did you read this before?
Like you put that on my discussion post. Our English teacher at my high school was actually a college professor, and then she has, like, we had to call her Dr. Campbell.
Really?
Yeah, and.
What school was this? Quinlan?
Campbell.
Campbell?
And we always did like a lot of stuff that most of us didn't understand.
What was the person's last name?
Cantrell?
Cantrell?
Yes.
Dr. Cantrell?
Is a girl.
That's interesting because that's my sister-in-law's maiden name, but she doesn't teach English. Dr. Cantrell. I feel like I've heard that before, but I can't remember where.
She has gold credit through other high schools too, like.
Oh, I mean, that's where I've heard it.
For our gold credit.
That makes sense. Let's see. So you've read this before, and you remember things. Oh, wrong class. Was anyone else completely and totally befuddled by this?
That was the first time. And then
How about that, Mom?
it kind of made sense after I read it a couple
I don't know if
times.
this one actually made sense, but I could have just gotten it wrong.
Did anybody use outside help? Like, did anybody like go and say, "I have no idea what this was," and then you went back and like found some
Where's the fun in that?
schmoop or some spark notes, and you were like, "Okay, I get it now."
I kind of read the other, after I made my discussion post, I read all the other discussion posts to see what other people had gotten about it, because I'm just like, I'm not entirely sure. So let's see what my classmates said.
I know, I get nervous thinking that mine's gonna be totally off.
Yeah.
Like everybody's gonna hate what I
It's like,
said.
I really like how he was saying this and how he meant it. You know, it's like, oh, that's
not what it
Yeah, I don't even wanna go back and read my comments because I get scared.
Then everybody's sitting there like, "Oh my gosh, do I dare disturb the universe?" Okay, so that's actually what I want to do first, is to read the whole poem through, because I want there to be like a sense of the collective feeling of it before we go back and talk about it and break it down like bit by bit. Because I think that it does have this just general feeling as you go through it, that later you try to kind of go by piece and process that feeling and where that feeling comes from. So I'm going to read through the whole thing, then we'll come back and start with the Italian, and we'll figure out what that means, and then we'll go on from there. So, here we go. And this is, again, me going to be trying to do my Italian again the best I can, but I can't make any promises. Here we go. Watch out, Jack. Here comes some Italian.
All right.
Se io credesse che mia risposta fosse persone che mai tornasse al mondo, che si fiamma seria senza più scosse. Ma per ciò che io mai di questo fondo, non tono vivo alcun, se odio è vero, senza tema di infamia ti rispondo. It's about as good as I've ever done it.
No.
That wasn't too bad. No idea if I said it right or if I even... I probably got a whole bunch of pronunciations wrong. Here we go. Let us go then. No, I don't like the way I said that. Let's try it again.
Redo.
Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights and one-night cheap hotels, and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells, streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. And the yellow fog that rubbed its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. And indeed there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. And indeed, there will be time to wonder, do I dare? And do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair with a bald spot in the middle of my hair, and they will say, how his hair is growing thin. My morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin, my necktie, rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pin. They will say, but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? In a minute there is time for decisions and revisions which a minute will reverse. For I have known them all already, known them all. Have known the evenings, mornings, afternoons. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. I know the voices dying with a dying fall beneath the music from a farther room. So how should I presume? And I have known the eyes already, known them all, the eyes that fix you in a formulated phrase, and when I am formulated, sprawling on a pen, when I am pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should I begin to spit out all the butt ends of my days and ways? And how should I presume? And I have known the arms already, known them all, arms that are braceleted and white and bare, but in the lamplight down with light brown hair. Is it perfume from a dress that makes me so digress? Arms that lie along a table or wrap about a shawl? And should I then presume? And how should I begin? Shall I say, I have gone at dusk through narrow streets and watched the smoke that rises from the pipes of lonely men in shirt sleeves leaning out of windows? Should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. In the afternoon, the evening sleeps so peacefully, smoothed by long fingers, asleep, tired, or it malingers, stretched on the floor here beside you and me. Should I, after tea and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis? But though I have wept and fasted, wept and prayed, though I have seen my head grown slightly bald, brought in upon a platter, I am no prophet. And here's no great matter. I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker, and in short, I was afraid. And would it have been worth it after all? After the cups, the marmalade, the tea, among the porcelain, among some talk of you and me, would it have been worthwhile to have bitten off the matter with a smile, to have squeezed the universe into a ball, to roll it towards some overwhelming question, to say, I am Lazarus, come from the dead, come back to tell you all, I shall tell you all. If one, settling a pillow by her head, should say, that is not what I meant at all. That is not it at all. And would it have been worth it after all? Would it have been worthwhile after the sunsets and the dooryards and the sprinkled streets, after the novels, after the teacups, after the skirts that trail along the floor, and this and so much more? It is impossible to say just what I mean, but as if a magic lantern threw the nerves and patterns on a screen. Would it have been worthwhile if one, settling a pillow or throwing off a shawl and turning toward the window, should say, that is not it at all. That is not what I meant at all. No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. Am an attendant lord, one that will do to swell a progress, start a scene or two, advise the prince. Withal an easy tool, deferential, glad to be of use, politic, cautious, and meticulous, full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse, at times indeed almost ridiculous, almost, at times, the fool. I grow old. I grow old. I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare to eat a peach? I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I've heard the mermaids singing, each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. I have seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back when the wind blows the water white and black. We have lingered in the chambers of the sea by sea-girls wreathed with seaweed red and brown till human voices wake us, and we drown. It just sounds like it gets increasingly more sad, like as you go, like sadder and sadder and sadder. But at the first, it's just something, there's an energy to it, and almost a mischievousness, a playfulness. Like, here we go, we're doing a thing. And then over the course of the time, it's just, like, that's kind of how it is. It's just, so there's that feeling that goes through it. But let's talk about how we approach that feeling. I'm going to start off by telling you the two things that I think are going on here. Well, really three. One is at a minor level. Of course, the poem is talking to us. Let us go then, you and I. So he's taking us on this journey. We're talking about this. It's almost like, well, I guess I need to talk about the quote before I say that. I also need to read Dante's Inferno before I talk about that. But I think two things are going on here. One, this man wants to have sex with this woman. That's what he wants to do. It's unfortunate that is yet again the topic of discussion. But apparently, according to history, it is a thing that men think about at least on occasion. So writers write about it. I believe the perpetual propagation of our species shows that that is something that has occurred at least frequently throughout history. How many people do we have in the world today? Is it 7 billion now? So it's happened at least 3 billion times, ish. Let's have 500 million times for the test tube babies, I guess. Which that's way overestimating the number of test tube babies there have been, I think, right? Those still have men, right? I have no idea how science works. So this is a man who wants to. I mean, he's acting like he wants to. I mean, he's kind of got some romantic notions he's talking about throughout, but for the most part, you can tell. I mean, he wants to make that tedious argument of insidious intent. He wants to, eventually wear her down and make her the love. Probably a little light on the love part too. Just more on the making. Another thing that's going on here, and it's interesting to pair the two, but I really think that something that's being talked about simultaneously, and I don't know if it's the same character, if it's just a metaphor is going throughout, but I think it's the same character wanting to do both. I think he wants to make love to the woman, and I also think that he wants to create a great work of poetry, a great work of art. And he's talking about throughout how his critics keep looking at him and judging what he comes up with. And no matter how good he tries to look, he's always being judged by others and like the voices that are constantly talking about him. And I think that he lets that get in the way of his talking to her too. Like, what if she says, that's not what I meant at all, and he spent all that effort? You know, so I think that those are the two things that are going on here. Is a guy trying to create a great work of art alongside also trying to get with a lady. And you don't usually, I don't think about these two things as being equated. Like, I don't think great poet, scuzzy dude trying to get a girl. But I think that is what's going on here. So, did anybody get that inkling when you were reading it? Yeah. You probably got the girl part. Did everybody get the poet part too? Like, he's a poet trying to write a great piece of...
I got the judgment sort of aspect of that. I didn't really relate it to poetry. Didn't
think about the poetry? Yeah, I think that I feel, and I'll show you exactly why in this first page. I think I'll get to it. But there's stuff that I see on the first page that get me thinking about a poet fairly quickly. But I want to start with the quote from Dante's Inferno. So we'll start there. What now?
That's what it is.
Yes. And here's the problem I've noticed, and this is going to be true if you take me for Britlit. I would definitely suggest getting this behemoth of a tome called the Norton Anthology of English Literature. And it quite literally means the literature of England when it says English here. So if you take me for this guy right here, Love Song of Joe for Proof, T.S. Eliot, right? He wrote Love Song of Joe for Prufrock. Well, this week I'm also going over in the Britlit class Love Song of Joe for Prufrock fairly quickly. But then we're going to move into The Wasteland, which is a extremely well-known poem of T.S. Eliot, probably considered, I don't know if it's considered the greatest poem in the English language, or if it's considered to be the most difficult poem in the English language. But you're lucky we read this one, because look at The Wasteland. This is the footnotes for The Wasteland. If you'll notice, the poem occurs in the top half of the page, and the footnotes that explain that top half of the page are about 3 times the amount of text below. And this is just typical of... So if you look at Love Song, if you think Love Song is hard to understand, here are the notes for Love Song. So the whole poem just kind of exists on its own, but then down at the bottom, a couple little notes. Not very many. So this is considered not nearly as difficult as The Wasteland. And I tell you, I've read it. Part of his motivation in The Wasteland was just to make you uncomfortable with how little you understood it. And he wanted that to be a visceral reaction you had, like, boy, this makes me uncomfortable. I don't understand what I'm reading. He wanted you to do that. This, I think he kind of wanted you to understand, but he wanted to make you kind of work to get there. And one of the places that he starts, and this is luckily, he doesn't do this a whole lot in this one, but with the quote from Dante. And so it's from Dante's Inferno. Does anybody know, I mean, I always allow people to tell me more because I always want to know more, because I haven't read Dante's Inferno and I want to. I've got Virgil's The Aeneid at home. Really want to go through that thing, but I've promised myself I'm going to do Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey first, because I feel like I have to. But what is the, like, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't Dante, he, like, goes to rescue his wife from hell?
No.
What happens?
He's on this, like, it starts where he's being chased by these demons or whatever.
Okay.
Which is, like, his own sin or whatever. And this girl that in real life he's attracted to this girl named Beatrice.
Okay.
Who's married, but he's, like, obsessed with her for his whole life. And so he puts her as Virgin Mary's handmaiden in his story. So she sends Virgil from hell to guide him through hell and then through purgatory and then through heaven. And ultimately he's just getting to his this girl he's obsessed with.
Who's already married.
Who's already there. She's Mary's handmaiden.
Oh, she's already there. I thought you were saying she's married.
No, she's Virgin Mary's she's married in real life. In real life she is married.
Oh, but now that she's dead.
Yes. Or in his story, she's Virgin Mary's handmaid. In real life, he's actually obsessed with this girl, but she's married.
Oh, so he writes.
Yeah,
so
he-
so this
he
is not a
inserted-
this is not a legit reality for even the character in the story.
No, not really. Or no, he is the character in the story.
Oh, okay.
Like he's referred to as Dante.
Interesting. So, but eventually, he and her, within the context of the story, get out of hell, correct?
Yeah. They go through purgatory and then they go through heaven.
Okay. So that is, I think, that helps you understand the basics of it. Of course, if you've read all of Dante, it would make even more sense. But the quote we have here comes from that story of going through hell to eventually get out. And what we have here in his quote is, this is Dante, and it says Dante and Virgil meet Guido de Montefeltro, who's one of the false counselors, and he's punished by being enveloped in an eternal flame. So you're like, oh, that's pretty bad. Like, he's enveloped in an eternal flame. He must have done something pretty bad. It's going to be painful. You know, when Dante asks Guido, because he's like, how does this even happen? How do you get enveloped in an eternal flame? He says, hey, why don't you tell me your life story? Guido responds, if I thought that my answer were to one who might ever return to the world, this flame would shake no more. Essentially, I wouldn't tell you. But since from this depth none ever returned alive, if what I hear is true, I answer you without fear of envy. So, he says, Guido, what's your story, man? How'd you get in this position where you're enveloped by an eternal flame here in one of the lowest circles of hell? He's like, listen, if I thought that somebody was asking me that could ever have a chance of returning from anywhere but hell, I'd be worried about telling you the story. But you're in hell, and I'm in hell, and nobody ever gets out of hell, right? So I can tell you the story, no big deal. The problem is, Dante's the one who does it. He's the one who goes to hell and gets out. So he's the one guy that he told the story to that you probably shouldn't have told the story to. Now, I don't know exactly what his shameful story was, but apparently, if we're starting off this thing right here with this, Love Song of Alfred Prufrock, then I'm assuming that Prufrock's story is something that he considers to be shameful. So that's why I think that it starts off with this, and I think that there's a sense of, God, what do you call it? Narcissism in this too. I mean, it's just a Prufrock. You know, it's not like we're given this massive mythological character. We're given J. Alfred Prufrock, who's got like the most, like almost accountant sounding name to me, like in the world, like a guy who could, like that's his job, is he's an accountant in the 20s. In fact, it was 1917, so I guess it's a little earlier than that. Like he just sits behind a desk all day, and he tries to look nice in whatever he's wearing, as nice as he has to look, and he just crunches numbers all day by hand. So it's just kind of a rote thing, one after the other. So he's got this shameful story he's going to tell us, and we already know that story is somewhat involved in wanting to write a great poem and wanting to have sex with a lady. So what's the shameful story here? My gosh, something that would be embarrassing that he wouldn't want to get out, yet it is a poem that we're reading, so obviously it's gotten out. So that's how we start. And then what I think we start off here is kind of just setting the stage and where we are. So the speaker is talking to us. Let us go, then you and I. It's us. We're going with him. And it kind of tells you that this poem is, I really feel like from the beginning, this poem is not going to be happy in terms of its eventual, what we find out, because he says, when the evening is spread out against the sky, that's a nice, I like that, when the evening is spread out against the sky, right? So here comes our romantic imagery. Here, what are we gonna get? We're gonna get something. I'm just coming up with something off the top of my head. It's stupid, but like I don't know. I can't think of anything. Like glitter on the face of heaven. Something cheesy would be better than what he gives us. When the evening spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table. So what he says is the sky is so beautiful and so still that it reminds him of a dude who's been anesthetized with anesthesia on a hospital bed. Like that's the image you want to give me? Beautiful night sky that looks like a guy who can't move in a hospital bed. Right? Is that where you would go? It's not where I would go. Like, I'm thinking glitter, the stars in my lady's eyes, something like that. Not basically dead guy. Like that just motionless man. I'm not even thinking like in a very attractive, I'm thinking hospital gown. You know, I'm thinking not like dude in a suit or anything. This is like somebody laying prostrate on a metal table with wheels, probably rusty in places. It's just not the greatest setup. Maybe something from a horror movie, but not quite that far. So this is not yet the image that we expected to get from like a love song, right? Ah, a love song. Where you talk about bodies on tables. And he says, let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights and one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. So the stage we have set here before us is, I'm going to start with the restaurants. It says sawdust restaurants, which I don't think we really have these days. I don't think it's legal, to be honest. Y'all ever go to Logan's?
Mm-hmm. Where you can throw
Logan's the restaurant? Logan's
Roadhouse.
Logan's Roadhouse, I guess.
Where you can throw
Yeah. Yeah, you get to the peanut shells on the ground. And you see them at the end of the day, if you've ever been there long enough, they're like sweeping the peanut shells, and they're trying to keep most of the people in the restaurant to like this one section. I actually don't like the Rockwall one. Every time we go there, they give us bad food. They screw something up. But Sherman's really good, so I really like the Sherman one. But this is the best comparison I can make. You know, it's not meant to, when you go there, do you think, what a classy establishment? Or like, is it, real, you know, Texas country eating, feels like I'm in somebody's house or like, you know, in a barn somewhere. That's kind of meant to be just like an informal setting. And now I've never lived next to the ocean. Has anybody lived next to the ocean before, like right next to it? No, see, me neither. But my assumption is that people are eating like fresh oysters or can eat fresh oysters like a lot more commonly than they can around here. It's like not something we really get a chance to eat. I mean, they have to get there pretty quick to us. But I'm assuming from what I've seen online, people like eating oysters like in like on videos, like it's pretty messy, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like it's the juices, or has anybody eaten oysters before? Yeah.
I've seen oysters.
But like they're pretty, there's juices all in it, and like I don't know what you do with the shells.
You just kind of like suck it out of the shell. It's weird.
Yeah. So I mean, it could be messy. The restaurant could get really messy. I don't know if you knock some shells off the table or something like that, or people are drinking in there. But it's going to be pretty smelly, I'm assuming, if like you're constantly got a bunch of like fish stuff and fish oils collecting all day. Now, probably what would be the best idea these days, they probably are required to do this, is to soap and mop the floor every day. But in 1917, I can't see them having readily available soap and water for every, you know, establishment that just wants to sell some oysters to eat. So likely what they would have done is you could go over to like the lumber mill and just buy whatever sawdust they've collected that day. They might give it out for free. They might pay like a, you know, couple pennies, like a dime or so. What they'll do is they'll sprinkle that on their floor at the beginning of the day. And as people like the juices start to come like throughout the course of the day, those land in the sawdust. And because it's got that sawdust there, you know, sawdust has that smell, that nice sawdust smell. And then when you sweep it up at the end of the day, sawdust is also very absorbent, so it's going to absorb most of the juices and stuff as you're, you know, sweeping it up. And it's a way to get around the whole soap and water problem, because soap, I imagine, is to waste that on a floor, I can imagine might have been pretty expensive, even like buying did they use lime for that sort of purpose? No, it's more like for smells, I don't know. But yeah, so it's going to be restaurants where people are like sprinkling sawdust on the floor every day and sweeping it up instead of doing a proper cleaning, and it's going to have that fishy smell, and you know, it's not the classiest establishment. Now you've also got restless nights, you know, places where people are having restless nights in one-night cheap hotels. Back then they didn't have cars. There were no, you know, they had cars. I mean, some people maybe had cars, but there wasn't like ready access to cars like we have. Has anybody traveled to, like, say, California before? Y'all gone there? And has anybody done it in a car? Or even a plane, I guess. When you go there, you get a night in a hotel, then you come home, right?
No.
No, why not?
Especially if you drive, because it's a 2-day drive.
It's like,
It's a 2-day drive.
Yeah.
It's from here.
We stayed there for a week
Yeah.
in San Francisco.
That was like a week? Oh, okay, well, that makes sense. It's exactly what you'd want to do. So, I mean, that's what I would think would be the comparison of, say, the journey that we're talking about here. Most people who are staying in hotels, it's not like a one-night venture. Usually you've had to travel from somewhere by horse and then stay there for a significant amount of time. You know, for them, anytime you're traveling from somewhere to stay in a hotel, you're going to have to be there for quite a few days because you have business to attend to in that place that you are, or at least want to use your time there. So a one-night hotel, that's somebody who basically already lives in the town and somebody who needs a place to go for a night in a town they already live in. Like, who would need to do that? Why would you need a different place to go sleep? What?
Not good husbands.
Perhaps not good husbands? Yeah, that's probably it. Prostitutes, adulterers. So these are people who need to go somewhere in a town that they already live and stay a night.
Or maybe if you're just passing through town and you're not going to stay in town, you're just traveling.
I mean, it's possible you could do that, and that probably still is the cheapest place to go, but don't expect to walk out of that place and have nobody think anything odd. Has anybody driven to Dallas before? And like, I don't know if it's still there, but there used to be this place that said, it was like motel, like there was a sign on the side of the highway that said motel hourly rates.
Yeah.
You ever seen that place before? And I was just like, hourly rates at a motel? Why would you need to stay at a motel for an hour? It doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you need a motel room for like an hour or two? But I think that the hour or two is our day's version of a night. You know, where a guy's like, I need a place to go for an hour or two, or I'm out of the eyes of all other people, and I'm willing to pay for the ability to have just an hour or two in a spot, and then I'm not there anymore. So I think that that's kind of our version these days of the one-night cheap hotels. And it's restless because you're in a hotel, and not only is there the meaning of the term restless and like you're not getting any rest, but your body is in restless motion. You know, like when you're restless, you're fidgeting and you're moving. There's a lot of movement happening on top of nobody resting there. So it's being used for purposes like he mentions in the next line. So this is a shady part of town, you could say. You know, this is like, according to Dave Chappelle, like the kind of area of town where it's gun store, liquor store, gun store. That's what he said in one of his comedy sketches. And you're just like, where am I? You know, things are getting kind of shady. So he says these are streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Now, the tedious argument of insidious intent, I've always thought I know what it means. It's an argument. It's tedious. You know, like making the same argument in the sense over and over and over again, over and over and over. And insidious, you know, it's something that's got a darker purpose, insidious intent. So going for something, you know, darker and kind of wrongish. So he's got that insidious intent that he's arguing over and over again tediously. And this is, I think, like the types of streets he's talking about here is like there's, you know, and he's saying streets that follow like that tedious argument that leads you to the overwhelming question. And it's like he's leading to that question. Oh, we know the question is, hey, baby. You know, starts with, hey, baby. And it moves on from there. So definitely cringy, definitely something that like you're just like, oh gosh, is he really gonna, you know, go? The way he's phrasing all of this is not the most romantic way. It's not the love song way. He's starting in like the dirty districts of town. It's very strange. And then he tells us, oh, don't ask what is it. Like, what's the question? What's the overwhelming question? That's what we're thinking. What overwhelming question? It's like, don't ask what is it. Let's go and make our visit. So let's just put that on hold for a while. And when we get there, in the room, the women come and go talking of Michelangelo. That's a little different. You know, we were in like the shady part of town. Now we're in a place, a little party, I guess, where there's women coming and going talking of Michelangelo. It's kind of classy, right? But I think that he's still got his mind in the gutter. In fact, so much in the gutter that he looks out the window and starts paying more attention to kind of the gutter. Because that's what I think happens here is he looks out the window at this party where the women are coming and going talking of Michelangelo. You ever been at a party, like I don't know about a party, but some kind of gathering where people are talking about things you just don't care about, and you get very bored These are people who I guess feel uppity. They're like, oh yes, have you seen the fresco of Michelangelo? And they're like, oh my gosh, I just want to like. And he's just like, all he can really think about is I got to get her aside and talk to her about my feelings. He doesn't care about any of the stuff that's going on besides just that. But I also think that he wants to create a great poem, and I think that he talks about that in the next two stanzas. So in the room when we're going talking to Michelangelo, I think what happens here is he kind of looks out the window. He's like, oh gosh. He looks out the window, and what he sees is like this outside, the fog settling in the evening on the, the streets, and I imagine it's a lamplight. Now I'm assuming they still don't have readily available electricity for lamps yet, so it's probably like a flickering lamplight that somebody's had to go light manually. And so he says, so it's actually going to be yellow light coming from it. The yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pool that stand in drains, that fall upon its back, that falls from chimneys, so that terrace, but suddenly you see it hot top every night, 12 months by itself. Anyways, that right there, what animal does that sound like to you? Dog to some. Muzzles, that makes us think of dog, but other animals can have a muzzle as well. So we got licked its tongue, lingered,
I think it was some sort of big cat.
Let fall upon its back, sudden leap, slipped, soft October night, curled, fell asleep. You said what, a big cat?
Yeah, some sort of large cat.
I wouldn't even necessarily say it has to be a large cat, as long as it's a cat.
Yeah.
Because all these motions are like cat motions. And cats technically have muzzles, they're just not as pronounced as a dog's muzzle. We think of the word muzzle more when we think of dog, but I think cats have muzzles as well. So what we have here is, I think, a beautiful image of like the fog is essentially like a cat curling about the house and falling asleep. So it's like settling on the evening, and you have the lamplight coming on it. So it's like think about fog and the way you might see it on the streets. Like if somebody walks through it and you see it kind of do that swirly motion, like it tends to move depending on what's moving near it. And so it might take these different motions. So it's almost cinematic in the way that he's describing it and the way it seems to have an action that we wouldn't normally associate with a fog. But it's pretty cool. I think it's the start of a beautiful, great poem about the city streets. And then he says in the next stanza, and indeed there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. And he says, there will be time, and he's always trying to reconvince himself of things. Have y'all noticed that? Like, there will be time. He's like, no, for real. I think it's that lack of self-confidence that flies in there. To prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. And he talks about this kind of the whole time. Where, like making like putting makeup on. You're kind of getting a face ready to meet the faces that you want to go meet, which are also made-up faces. So nobody really ever sees each other's true face. It's always like a face you make up for others. And he says, time to murder and create. And that's what got me thinking, wait, maybe he's talking about like not real murder. You're not murdering people. So it's got to be like maybe murdering creations of yours, like things you've created. So I can murder the things I've created. And he says, time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. So I think that's like the questions that you maybe try to answer with the poetry you write. That I don't have as much of a formed opinion on. But he says, time for you, time for me, time yet for 100 decisions and 100 visions and revisions. Those are ways you talk about writing, indecisions, revisions, before the taking of a toast and tea. And then that calls me back to the stanza before it, where he says, the yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes. Then the next line is the exact same line, just reconfigured. The yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes. Like he made a decision about how that line should go, but then changed his mind. And rather than take it out completely, he left it. So he's wanting us to see that he had a vision and then a revision. And then the next stanza, he talks to us about how, yeah, I can have visions and revisions, no big deal. And so I think that stanza about the smoke and the cat is beautiful. It's a beautiful little bit of poetry if you just take it on its own and say, wow, what is this, like this little cat fog? It's gorgeous. But the next lines we get him talking about, yeah, there's plenty of time in the world. I can have a vision. I can revise that vision. No big deal. Got plenty of time in the world, right? And then the next line that we get is, in the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. It's a repetition. So it implies there's a repetition in the world, and that he's being snapped back to reality from his little poem that he wrote. This is where we're going to have to stop. We don't have time to continue. But next time we will continue the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. And it gets darker from here, guys. He's optimistic, plenty of time, but we're about to not be optimistic. We're about to be nope-optimistic.
That hurt.